managing over $28 trillion in assets. From 2010 through 15, Glenn was the North American Group Manager of the Sourcing Center of Excellence at Avanade, a $2 billion enterprise IT solutions consulting firm majority owned by Accenture. And before that, a senior recruiting researcher at Microsoft. Glenn's also the founder of RecruitingOnline.com, the world's longest continuously running self-paced online course to learn talent sourcing. With that, Glenn, I'd love to turn it over to you, and I look forward to listening along with everybody else.
Super. Well, thanks very much, Dan. And for those of you who don't know me, I've been involved in sourcing for a very long time, and happy to be sharing some of those insights with Search Wizard sourcers. The things that I'm going to today are probably some are more basic, some you may not have seen, or hopefully at least I'll be showing you a twist in how I use a given tool or method that maybe you haven't used before. So again, don't feel like you have to copy anything down. You're going to receive the full copy of all the slides that we'll be sharing today with all the embedded hyperlinks included. If you're not already connected to me, you'll see I've got all my links to my social networks, and certainly would encourage you to become a first-degree contact with me if you aren't already. So I'm not going to show you my bio. You heard a little bit from Dan anyway, and you can learn more later if you really want to. So again, if you just joined, please don't copy anything down. You're going to get all this later, all the slides. So let's start getting into it. So particular tools, when you're first developing your lists of names, two very useful sites I find are LeadFerret and ConnectData. And connect.data.com is for those of you who have been around sourcing for a long time. And they're pretty similar in how they work. Both of them allow you to, and let me ask those on a mute yourself until it's, that would be very helpful. Well, let me show you how these two interfaces look, and we can do some actual searches as well as time allows. So the idea with LeadFerret or connect.data.com, you're going to register on the site, which is free. You can run searches, which are free. The place that you need to either pay or use points as their systems work is when you want to see individual person's contact info, but you don't necessarily need that to find value out of these sites. And both of them I would think of in terms of online business card trading services. So if you put in contact info for somebody that's not already in the system, then you can extract contact info in return. But as I said, you don't necessarily have to enter any information in order to extract the lists of people that these tools generate. And I'll show you how that works now. So when you're on this kind of a site, you're usually going to be picking either a specific job title or job title family against either specific companies or a specific industry and sub-industry, and they really do have some nice breakdowns within these. So as you can see on the slide I'm showing now, you can pick levels from C-suite all the way down to individual contributor. You can select multiple ones. These are checkboxes. So if you want to take everything in between, that's fine too. Probably wouldn't be searching by name, but the gender option is kind of interesting. LeadFerret offers that. Data.com does not. The only thing about the gender option is it's not as complete as I would like. So when you generate your name list through this tool, if you select female, sure, you're going to get all female names, but it won't be the entire set of female names that you could have gotten had you gone through the list person by person. And you can see a lot of job functions along the bottom as well. And then they have some other ways you can filter. I wouldn't really trust the section 4 and 5 here of the mobile platform and the social media links, because their data is not very comprehensive in those categories. But certainly searching by company is fine, and searching by location is fine, but you wouldn't want to use the location here in section 6 because this is the location of the company, which isn't necessarily the location of the person. The person location is in section 9 that comes a little bit further down. Company size, though, that could be useful. Sometimes you're looking to get people from startups or maybe really large firms or somewhere in between. You can filter that way. Both sites support that. And last but not least, you can use industries. The industry codes that they have are pretty standard. If you haven't heard of SIC or NAICS codes, they're basically every industry and sub-industry has one of these codes assigned to it. It's a standard North American classification system. The easiest way, I think, to do it is when you're on a search engine, you can Google this. Just put in the name of your company followed by the phrase SI or NAICS code in quotes, and then I guarantee you'll find their code. In fact, you'll probably find multiple NAICS codes for a given company because most larger firms are in more than one business area. So you may have to do a little filtering to figure out which are the best ones for your purposes. And as I said, last but not least, you're going to want to limit by location. This is where you specify candidate location. So it's done differently on the other site, but on LeadFerret, it's radius off of a zip code. So those of you who use LinkedIn will have no problem with that. And then you get results like you're seeing here at the bottom of the screen where in this particular screenshot, I was using a search where I did select that gender button. So that's why you're seeing all female names here of people who are in engineering skill areas, and that again was a checkbox with companies in the greater DC area. So it's pretty useful. Now, if I were to get the actual work contact information for these people, that's where I would have to either pay or redeem points. But frankly, you don't need to do that, right? Most companies have pretty standard email formats. Very few companies still have done anything beyond first name dot last name, first initial last name, and a handful of others. So once you know the pattern for a given company, it'll be real easy to figure out the format for any of these folks. So using extra points against these sites to reveal the contact info is not going to get you home contact info. It's only going to get you the work data, so really not any more than you could figure out yourself. And then, as I said, connect.data.com, a little bit different on the on the locations. It doesn't use radius off a zip code. It uses metro areas, which I find is just about as good. So you can pick any of the U.S. or Canadian metros. They even have it for a few other major countries, not quite as broad as we'd like. So those of you who are doing international sourcing, if it's primarily an English-speaking country, these sites are pretty good, but for ones in other languages, it's not quite as diverse. All right, so how would I otherwise compare these two? Well, the other thing that's useful, as you can see here in this screenshot from data.com, I'm getting an extra column at the far right that says updated. So that updated column, you can sort by any of these column headings if you click them. So if you're toggling it to go from newest to oldest, that can be useful because the ones that have been updated in the system most recently are probably more accurate in that the person is still there. Of course, if somebody used to be a senior engineer at Aerojet, you're probably still going to be interested in that talent, but it's unlikely you're going to find them there if the updated date has something like 2012 or 2011. So you may have to do a little extra work to find that person. But of course, it's not hard to cross-check against other sites like LinkedIn to find people. And everyone's always asking, so how often will you find someone new on a site like this versus a site like LinkedIn? There's a high percentage of overlap. I wouldn't want to guess specific percentage of new names, but you definitely will find some folks here that you will not see on LinkedIn. Because again, this is data input by people who are users of the site. So another thing that I find very useful when I'm searching is doing macros. So macros, some of you know from an Excel context, so I'm not talking about that kind of programming, but rather when you've got a certain block of text that you find yourself repeatedly using. So maybe you have a certain string that you like to run quite often that has a bunch of common synonymous job titles for a skill that you're looking for frequently, or maybe it's a list of companies that are always considered hot prospects for one of your client companies. Instead of having to generate that each time, wouldn't it be nice if there was a quick way to pull up that whole bunch of text? It's even useful, by the way, if you have letters that you're sending the same few paragraphs every time. Nothing wrong with having that kind of stuff saved in an Outlook alternate signature, but again, that kind of text also can be stored in a macro tool. So I'm going to show you the one that I like to use. There are many others that you'll see linked on slide 10 when you get the deck later. Let's see if I can get back to, here's my tool, and again, this is free. In fact, everything I'm going to show you today is free, so you have no excuse not to try these things. Macro Tool Works used to be known as Perfect Keyboard. If you used it back then, it's still available, but their more robust product, which again is still free, is called Macro Tool Works. And all you do is, after you install it, it's going to ask you once to put in whatever that long string of text is that you would want to have repeatedly available to you. So I know it's a little small here to see this, so maybe let's see if I can zoom in a little bit, and that might help us out. Or you know what, maybe even easier, because I'll probably create some, as we go today, I'll paste it here in another file and we can all look at this together. So here I've got common job titles that I don't want to see, right? When we're sourcing, you always get these people who are like, you know, financial recruiter or Java software recruiter. Well, you don't want to see those people in your search results when you're looking for Java or finance or something like that. You only want to see the people that actually do that work. So by putting in that kind of search, so let's say you are looking for some kind of software developer type, so you might look for software or Java or something else, .NET. That part that would follow that, and again, this is syntax you'd use on LinkedIn, other sites like the job boards, Indeed, Simply Hired, have some similar kind of syntax, but those keywords that you don't want to see in the job title field, that's pretty common to put that as part of your search string. So instead of having to recreate that every time, what this tool is doing is it's saving it under what they call a trigger. So whatever little shortcut trigger you want to generate that longer block of text, and again, it can be literally several paragraphs worth of stuff or thousands of characters if need be, all get saved under a shortcut. So the shortcut I chose in this tool is .hr not. So that's reminding me these are the HR-related job titles that I do not want to see. And the reason I typically create my shortcuts with a period at the beginning is because most things you type don't start with a period immediately followed by letters. And that's good because these shortcuts generate themselves automatically no matter where you are, meaning that if you were just typing a normal sentence that ended with a period and you typed one of these shortcuts right after it, it would expand into that text. But most sentences right after the period, you're going to type a space. So you won't ever accidentally type this shortcut. So I'm going to show this to you in context. Let's go into our browser. And a lot of you are probably doing these kinds of searches. So here I am in the job title field. I say, yes, I would like to search for someone who does software or Java or .NET, but I don't want to see any of that other stuff. So here's where I would type .hr not, and that happened super fast. I don't know if you caught that, but it added that whole long string that I had saved in my macro tool. So there it is. That whole bunch of other text immediately got inserted right where my was. So that's a great way to save yourself time to make sure you're doing that exhaustive version of your list. I've got other ones for other things that I commonly type. Let's see, what's another one that we would do often? Company names certainly are a good choice. So if you're doing company names, let's see if I can bring that up again. So I have a whole list of competitors that I'm often asked to search against in the financial space. So I just created a shortcut for that whole long laundry list, .keykos, K-E-Y-C-O-S. So again, if I were doing that in a context of a LinkedIn search, sorry, too many open windows, here we go. So in the company field, this is where I would type .keykos, and you can see how that instantly expanded to generate that long string of company names. So that's really helpful. So if you don't have some kind of shortcut macro generator, definitely install it. It's like most of them are free. They automatically boot up when you start your computer, so they're just running in the background, takes up very little memory, easy to use. All right, let's talk about search engines for a second. I'm sure and probably the favorite of most of you, if I were to have a show of hands, would be Google. Maybe Bing would be a close second. Some of you smarty pants out there may be aware of other niche search engines like Million Short and Exalead and others that have some interesting qualities about them. But one kind of search engine that you may not be touching at all are what we call cluster search engines. And what they do is, while they still have the same kinds of results you would normally expect to see in the main body of the page, the extra thing that they're doing is what you see here on slide 11 in the left-hand column. It's got this list of categories, what they call clusters. Another search engine that does this is called Yippee, which actually used to be called Clusty. So they're all about this clustering concept, meaning that if you click on one of these subcategory clusters in the left-hand side, it changes the results that you see in the main body of the page. So that can be very helpful when you're searching on a new topic or you're digging into an area that maybe you haven't touched in a long time and you're not exactly sure which aspect of those keywords matters to you. When you run that search, what's great, and you can see in this screenshot I've got custody and fund accounting, that, you know, is it that I'm really interested in people who understand mutual funds or hedge funds or something else entirely? And the good news is that those topics it intuitively understands are associated with some of those search results but not others. So that allows me to dig very quickly to just review the search results that matter to me. And you can see in parentheses how many results related to that subcategory are there. And what's great about this is you can see I'm not limited to the 1,000 results, or more likely in the hundreds that Google actually presents versus what they claim they have in their system. You can actually get thousands of results if you really want to go that deep. But when you pick one of the subcategories, you usually end up with a much more reasonable. All right, I'm going to move into a whole other category. And again, if you have questions about any of these things, if you wouldn't mind, just save them. We'll get to it toward the end. I promise we'll allocate some time, and we can even go a little bit long if need be to cover them. So Data Miner is probably one of my favorite Chrome browser extensions. So hopefully all of you have Chrome. If not as your default browser, it's at least one of the browsers you have installed on your machine, because it really is so valuable, in part from the extra functionality that you pick up from all the different extensions you can install. And some of the best ones are free. Data Miner is one that I learned about a few years ago from Aaron Lintz, who I'm sure a lot of you know as well, frequent source presenter. And what I like about Data Miner is that it will look at any page that has a lot of information in it that kind of follows a pattern, and then will parse it out in a way that's very user-friendly so that you can pull it right into a spreadsheet. So some of you may be aware of this category as web scraping tools, and that's basically what this is. I just find that the way Data Miner does it is pretty intuitive and flexible. What they have are these built-in recipes, as they call them, where it knows what the page format of lots of different sites are, and you just need to find the right recipe for the site that you're trying to scrape, and it will figure out how it should be parsing the data on that page so that it ends up nice and pretty. So let me do an example to show you how this works. The first one I guess I'll do is with Twitter results. I'll show you one for LinkedIn as well. So let's say you are on Twitter. Oops. There we go. And you're doing some searches, maybe by some very specific keywords. Maybe there's a certain technology that you're interested in. What am I doing? I'm in the wrong box. My apologies. We want to be using the search box. Okay, there we go. So I'm seeing under accounts different people that obviously know something about Metasploit, and those of you who source for people who do penetration testing and all that fun kind of techie security stuff will already know about that area. So what if I discover somebody in this list that seems to be in the right space? Like here's Chris Gates, for example, and then I realize, okay, this guy is clearly someone I'm interested in. Who else does he know or is associated with, and can I do some kind of processing against those people? So he's got a whole bunch of followers. So here's where a tool like this is really useful. What Data Miner is going to do is, if I go to his following page here, so these are the people that he thinks are interesting that he wants to pay attention to, then in this list, all I really need to do is just highlight any one of the results on the page. I'll just drag my mouse across here, and then I right mouse click it, and when I right mouse click one example, you can see I've got this thing in my list here of different extensions, Data Miner. So again, you have to install that extension first, but once you do that, you'll have this option to do this get similar thing here, and then you're going to want to find the right recipe to process those results. So the good news is when it launches the Data Miner extension, you'll see this whole section here called Public Recipes right here on the left-hand side, and you'll be able to figure out pretty quickly which of these is going to be the right one. The ones that I think are very useful, I put them in the deck so you'll see them. The Twitter one here is the one that I like, Twitter follow. And you can see now that the right-hand side of this pane has changed. It now looks the way I would hope that it would, where it's parsed out username versus real name versus bio, and if it had a link as well, that's parsed out as well. So all you have to do is apply the right recipe. And of course, you don't have to always go through the list of public recipes every time. Once you see a recipe that looks good, that does what you want it to do, all you have to do is click the Save Recipe button near the bottom left, and then it'll add it to the top section of your Data Miner screen under My Recipes. will allow you to quickly get to those going forward. So after I see what I like, I click the download button. There's also one that looks like it's hidden by my one of the icons here, but there's another button next to it that says copy to clipboard. So if you want to do it that way, that works just as well too. And what it's going to do is save it as a CSV file. So it'll be very conveniently saved to a CSV, which means it'll open in Excel. And there we go. So you can see here it's figured out the link to their profile, their name, their bio, and if they also had a link, that's there too. So you can build up a list of people very quickly with a tool like that. All right, let me go back to where I was here. Oh, hold on. Too many screens open. Oh, I said I would also run this against LinkedIn results. So yes, it does that very well too. So LinkedIn, if those of you who've been using the tool for more than a few years may remember, there used to be an export function to Excel. Seems like after something's used and it's popular, they either move it to the paid part of their tool or they take it away altogether. But you can still use a tool like this when you're viewing search results to process it in a similar way where it's going to just put it into that nice Excel compatible format so you can process it like a call list. And again, we can come back to that based on time and show you more examples if you like, but I've got some examples built in here into the slideshow that'll make it easy to follow later. All right, let's jump to another area, competitive intelligence. So when you're screening candidates or you're coming across interesting information online, every so often something's going to pop out at you and trigger your radar to say, wow, that's useful intel. I could probably act on that in a way that's going to help me with my sourcing. You may hear, for example, from a candidate that one of their departments is consolidating, or they lost a big contract and so they're going to have to lay some people off, or maybe some really important high-up person in the company has decided to go to a competitor, and that's the kind of magnet hire who will probably draw away a lot of his direct reports. Well, that's good stuff that you want to share with your fellow sourcers and recruiters. Is there something that can help you gather that kind of data on a regular basis? So the best free tool that I've seen for this is something called Owler. And Owler is, you might think it's based on the owl, kind of the thing that sees so well at night, but I think the origin of the name is actually from a guy named Fowler who started the company. He's also, not so coincidentally, the guy who started Jigsaw, which was later bought by Data.com. And what he's done here that's different, it's not information so much on individual people, it's more information on companies. And you can really do a nice job with this. I'm going to show you in a second how I use it. But before I jump away from this slide, I'll also mention that depending on your industry niche, there are often some really good sources of information, and you should certainly make it a habit to have this kind of data come into your inbox. You can use RSS, or you just have a certain reading list that you like to go to every day of sites that maybe just have them launch as separate tabs in your browser when you start your day so you can look at that information. The regional sites that I like, Silicon Valley has something called Link SV, Valleywag. Also by every major metro, there's something called the Biz Journal. Here in Boston, it's called the Boston Business Journal, but most other metro areas have the same kind of thing where it's company news that's tech-related. There are often a lot of smaller niche e-zines that cover the same kind of data. So take a look in your own area If there are certain metros that you tend to recruit in more regularly, you'll probably discover industry-specific sites just for your city. If you're looking at an industry as a whole, I like all the ones that begin with Fierce. So you've probably heard of Fierce Pharma, Fierce Markets, this whole family of Fierce sites. Again, if you haven't been to this, you just go to any one of them and you'll see they've got a whole long laundry list, including biotech. Most of them skew in that medical arena, but they do have a few others that are pretty decent outside of the biotech med space. And again, you'll see that list at the bottom of any of those sites. Some are more tech. They got a few energy ones, and they even have two that are sort of finance skewing that are pretty good also. So you can get good daily news from any of those. And of course, Glassdoor, everyone knows, is very good for getting reviews from individual employees on a particular company. And if you're looking to find similar resources for a particular niche site, I don't know how many of you use the Google command. I love the related command on Google. So that's, let's say that you found a particular company or a trade association, or maybe it's a conference that has its own website. When you found something that you think is in the ballpark that you're curious, is there anything else that's like this out there? This is the best command, frankly, I think Google has, that gives you a very targeted number of results. You never get more than 200 from this kind of Google query, often a lot less. You just type related : in front of the root domain of the site you're looking for, and it will find you all the other similar sites to it. So it's only the ones that it feels confident are very similar content-wise to the site that you're comparing it to. All right, so I promised I would do Owler, so let me do that. So here's how Owler works. You should register first using the domain of the company that you're working at. So if you're representing a particular client, I would use that client company's domain. So hopefully they've given you an email address that you can use associated with that company domain, because when you do that, it will pick that firm as your default My Employer. And then when you log into the site and you see your dashboard, it's going to look a little bit like what you see at the bottom here of where it's got some basic information about you, and then it's going to try to guess some of your competitors. It won't do a job, but you can click the blue link you see that red arrow pointing to near the bottom to change your set of competitors. So you go ahead and do that, and now you can put in whatever firms you want to use as the competitive set. And I've got, I think, about 15 or so that I like to get news about on a regular basis. And what this site is going to do is it's going to send you every day press releases, other news stories from credible sources related to that firm, as well as any acquisitions that that firm is making. And even for those of you who do finance stuff, if a company takes an investment stake in a particular firm, it's going to report that as well. And it sends it to you in a nice daily email. And again, it's not necessarily going to be for all the companies. So if nothing important came out about one of your companies that day, you just won't get any feed related to that. But then it's, when you click the links in the email, it'll bring you back to your personal portal here where you can see all the different stories that it found, including ones that maybe didn't fit in the email message, but you can dig as much as you want to see that data. And again, this is a little screenshot that'll remind you later when you're setting up your free account how you can categorize particular companies. You can multiple groups. So this is good too. You don't necessarily just want to have a list of my competitors. You may want to have companies in particular industry niches, because if you're in finance, of course, it's not just banks that are relevant. You're also looking at insurance companies, and there may well be other industry niches. So you can group them however you want in this tool and then you can see data just related to those firms. All right, I'm going to jump in another direction here. Let's talk about diversity. Hot topic in most companies. It's a big part of what I do in my daily job running a diversity sourcing team. And we saw one brief example about how you can use a women filter on the searches within Lead Ferret, but if you want to be able to search for diversity in a broader way, then what are some good methods you can use against any of the major sites? So my favorites that I do are the fraternities and sororities that are associated with African Americans, Latinos, Asians. There are a number of these out there. Most of these are geared to the United States, so those of you who are sourcing in other countries, I can't guarantee they have as strong a presence there. But if you are looking for that are most likely to be African American, then they probably belong to one of those fraternities or sororities when they were at their college. Most of them are based at the historically black colleges and universities, but some have chapters at major schools, so that can be a way to find people of color in schools that are more general population. There are lists of these. I've got links to them so you can easily create your own search string with all of these fraternal organizations in one query and put that in the keyword search of pretty much any site. There are a number of schools, of course, so if you can search by school, which LinkedIn allows you to do, some other sites, put in the list of all those HBCUs or even women's colleges. And last but not least, the professional associations, which I'm sure a lot of you know. Almost every industry now has at least one diverse, focused association for that industry, and of course that'll get you pretty targeted. And I will do pretty long search strings for this, especially if I'm using LinkedIn where it allows really long strings, and of course you can do that in your macro short. You don't have to recreate those. You have the first one done. So another interesting angle for diversity is searching for faces. So what do I mean by that? If you were on Google, and we'll go to Google, you may know that there's also an image search option for Google, and if you were on the main page, you'd see a link for images at the top, or you can just go to images.google.com. So here we are. Now I'm going to think in terms of the type of talent that I'm looking for. So we mentioned Metasploit before, which is part of that bigger category of penetration testing, sometimes abbreviated as pen testing, but you could put in whatever job title or skill area that you think would make sense for you. And then when you have these image results pop up, none of them really look like they're related to people, and they're not, but you can filter these. So it's not the More menu, sorry, it's the Search Tools button. You'll see that when you're on the Google Images search. That gray button in the top bar will expand another menu below it, and then within that submenu, now you've got this type menu with the choice of face. So when I click face, ooh, what happens now? I get only results of images of people. So this is Google leveraging its AI to only show you image results that are people. And if I click on one of these, well, who do I get? Obviously, it's related to penetration testing because that's what I searched on. So somehow this image, either in its metadata or the way the file was named or all the other ways that Google does metadata associated with images, these kinds of people pop up. So this is a great way to get somebody who isn't necessarily on a major network like LinkedIn. It's going to be picking up things like articles that they've written where they'll have their little headshot included, maybe on the About page of their company's website. And even if you did find them on LinkedIn, a lot of profiles, as I'm sure you've seen, are really sparse. All they have is, the current job title and company. Well, how do you know if they call themselves developer that they also understand penetration testing? There's no clue around that. So this kind of search is going to allow you to pull up people where you can tell what their areas of expertise are that a general profile site would not. So try that with different keywords that you may be curious about who else is out there. And I guarantee you will find interesting folks like I did here with, I used the phrase cyber penetration testing. And of course, because we're searching faces, right, it's not too hard to figure out at least gender diversity, so I can quickly, if women are my priority for sourcing, I can just click on the female images in the results. And another little tip that you see here on the top right, if you ever run a search where you add she or her to your search, you can do that almost anywhere. That's a great way to limit your results just to females, since it's probably going to pick up references to a quote followed by she said, or her background includes, so you'll get a lot of bio pages that have her in there. Great way to limit your results to female. My other favorite way to find women results only in sourcing is when you use first names. So a lot of people have talked about this over the years. I've been doing it forever. There was a nice post that Glenn Caffey did on his blog, I think it's a few years now, where he had a good list of them. It wasn't all of them, though. So if you want to get all the names that are usually female first names, go to the U.S. Social Security website. They've got a baby names list for pretty much any year you want. So you can pick the top names for people who are, say, born 30 years ago, if that's probably around the ballpark of the experience level for the people you need to hire. And you can put that all in one big long Boolean string like you see here in the screenshot. Enter that in the first name field on your LinkedIn search, and then you'll only get female search results. The only caveat I would add to that is be careful if you are picking somewhat gender ambiguous first names like Alex or Kelly that also could be used by males. You may have to sift through some extra results. So it's your call. I mean, you can either include those and have to do a little more filtering, or knock them out and just pick the ones that are almost 100% of the time women only, and then you should still get a good number of names even if the rest of your search is pretty narrow. The other way to search niche, of course, is within particular talent communities. Now, I'm not talking about the ones that employers have to try to attract people, which almost always have hardly anybody in them, with a few exceptions. But the communities that are created by the major portals out there, now they have critical mass, and so that's interesting. We want to leverage those. So those of you who do technical sourcing have probably been to things like GitHub, or on the design side, you've been to Dribbble. All of these sites have a way to search for their members. So take advantage of the search. If they have a native search for people on the site, certainly you want to do that. But even if you can't, realize that Google probably indexes most of those people pages as well. So as long as you know what the URL format is for people-specific pages on those sites, then you can limit your search that way. So a good example to illustrate that is Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is a great technical site, but most of your search results, if you search there, are going to be people answering questions of a technical nature, but it's not necessarily going to have any particular bio there. But if you search for, within that site, in URL : users and in title : user, then you will only get the member pages on the site. And then on top of that, throw in a keyword or two to limit your results. You can also add some location names, because those are also part of those people pages. And you can see in that second example, I've got both some city names as well as state names. because people often will list their little hometown, which is not going to be the major city. So to capture all of those, you're probably going to have to do state as well as city, but there's no obligation for people to put the state. So you get a lot of people with bios that just say, I live in Dallas. So there's no Texas. You wouldn't find them searching by Texas. Data miner, again, is an interesting way to search through these results. So if you pull up one of those kinds of Google queries, you get a whole bunch of results in Google. You actually have a data miner recipe that's really good for extracting the information off of these Google results at compatible CSV format. So that might be a useful way to process results like this. All right. I can see we're starting to run a little short on time, so I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of these, and again, we can go deeper into any that interest you. The scholarly databases, those of you who are looking for people who maybe have published work in peer-reviewed journals, they maybe have invented something and they've got their name on a patent. These are the kinds of resources that will help you find that kind of expertise. So if you haven't used these sites, I would take a look at all of them. They're really good. And of course, if it is inventions that you're interested in, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office native search is really great. The syntax is a little non-intuitive, so take a look at their help page. It'll make it clear how to search. So you can see, for example, here, if you find someone's name, this example, Salvatore Stolfo, you have to, if you want to search for him as an inventor of some patent, it's IN for inventor, then a slash, and then you put the name in quotes where it's last name, semicolon, space, first name. Again, they have very consistent rules. You just have to know how to search on their site. So do take a look at the help when you first use it, and then you'll find it's not too hard to find good results. And then I will cross-search this kind of stuff on a site like LinkedIn, because when you find one person on a patent, of course, it's pretty rare that it's going to be a single inventor. It's usually part of a team. So you're going to get all these other people who have expertise in that same kind of technology area, and that's a good way to pull up a lot of other interesting talent that you wouldn't have been able to find because it's not going to be on their profile. And I guess the last one we'll probably have time to dig into a little here is on Facebook. Facebook has hit critical mass, finally, on professional information, not as much detail or in all the ways that you can search LinkedIn, but it makes up for it by having so many more people. So with LinkedIn at 400 million profiles, which probably in terms of actual people is much less, but still it's got to be in the hundreds of millions, whereas Facebook is in the billions. So you've got many more people, and if all they're putting in their job title and location and company, that's not bad. So we can search against that if we know how to use the filters within that tool. So Facebook has its own kind of language for that kind of searching. It's usually you put in a job title, who live in a particular city and work for, and then put in your company name. But there's a much easier to use interface that was developed by Shane McCusker, and if you have not used the Facebook UID extension that they've created for the Google Chrome browser, I would highly recommend installing that as well. And then what you're able to do is search using these different filters like current job or any job or currently lives in or used to live in, and then you can get your results from that kind of search. And when you use their extension, the extra benefit you get is it will take whatever search results you have, and it will not just what's showing on the page, but it'll actually go all the way down to the bottom. So probably a little easier if I explain this in context. So when you're searching on Facebook, you're probably notice this, that, and I'll use the example here I was just talking about. Oh, well, here's their extension. So once you have it installed, you can do it this way, but I'll contrast it. Software engineers who live in Boston. And where's my people results? Oh, for Pete's sake. Hang on. Okay, I wasn't actually phrasing it exactly right. The good news about using an extension like that is it'll help you to figure out what the right way to craft these strings are, where you can say, find me people who are currently have a certain title at a certain company. And what I like about their tool is that it won't just get me the 5 or 10 that are showing on the screen. If there are many more results, Facebook is one of these sites that has this kind of infinite scroll concept where once you get to the bottom, if you scroll down a little bit more, then you get to see a little bit more. But if I were just to do a copy-paste of everything on this page, I wouldn't get everybody in the search results. It's not until you scroll to the very bottom that you do get everyone, whereas this tool is going to do that for you. It knows where the final end of all your search results are. So if you do a search for software engineers at IBM in Boston, it'll find 177 of them. It would take you a long time to keep using the infinite scroll of Facebook to get your browser down to 177. You don't have to wait for that. And the results that you get are probably not too different than what you would have seen using one of those Jigsaw, Lead Ferret kinds of sites. You get the person's name, you get a link to their profile. You also get a Facebook email address, which at different times has worked. Sometimes it doesn't work, where you can put the username at facebook.com and a message can get to them. This does not work consistently, but still having a whole list of names in Excel with a link to their profiles, knowing that all of them have a certain job title, live in a certain location, is a nice place to be starting from. And you'll find a lot of them are not on LinkedIn at all. There is a really good article that was written that explains how you can tweak the URLs of these search results to dig a little bit deeper. So let's say you wanted to find people who like Java on top of that they work at a particular company in a particular location. So if you want to add that element to your search, it's got, you'll see an example here that explains how to add that kind of syntax to your search. And my absolute favorite one when it comes to diversity is after you run one of these Facebook type searches, all you have to do right after the final slash in your URL is add female/intersect with a final slash. And what that will do is it will only show you the female subset of whatever you were searching on. So in the example of what I have sitting up here, here's all these current software engineers at Amazon. If I go to the very end of this web address and I add /females/intersect/, you can see now it's still showing me software engineers at Amazon, but only the women ones. So that's a great way to get some extra diversity going in your query. All right, well, I know there's some other fun tools I could be showing you, and there are some paid ones that probably are worth getting a free trial of. So if you haven't seen some of those, I would say take a look at these. They're kind of interesting. And then I have some things in the appendix that I think you're going to find cool also that we didn't get time to show you, but I've tried to put them in a very step-by-step format that you can easily follow. So I am going to stop the sharing here, and let's see if we got any questions. Dan, maybe you can help field those for us.
I believe people can raise their hand here or just turn on their mic. Looks like guest 4 maybe has a question.
All right. And I have to admit, I'm having a little trouble in doing that while I'm recording this thing. So I'm going to take the liberty of stopping the recording, and then you can still ask your questions here. Back to...
Looks like Michelle Egan has a question for you, Glenn.
All right. Would you mind reading it to me? I'm trying to figure out how to get back to that too.
Michelle, do you want to turn off your mute and ask your question verbally?
That's good too.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. No, all I wanted to know is, you've probably shared this already, that we will have access to this information you shared with us after the presentation?
All of it, absolutely.
Excellent. It was wonderful. Nice job. We appreciate it.
Super. Thank you.
Glenn, I had a question with getting back to your example when you used data miner to extract the Twitter bios and then downloading the results in Excel.
Okay.
I noticed that person was following over 3,000 people. Is there any way to be able to extract all those 3,000 results and download all of them in one shot?
So yes, what that requires is an additional tweak on the recipe to add what's called the next page XPath element. You know, I think maybe what I'll do is I should be able to integrate that as an additional slide. I'll talk with Dan afterward if he's willing to delay us sending the deck to all of you, and maybe I can throw that in there. So it's not part of what I showed you, but yes, you can definitely have data miner automatically go to the next page of results within a site and then parse the data. So it's slightly more involved, but yeah, once you've added it to your recipe, it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
But good question. Thank you. And on that note, I should say, while we're waiting for anyone else who wants to ask something, it's not the only scraper out there. If some of you may have heard of, let's see, there's Kimono Labs. Unfortunately, just got bought, so that one's probably not going to be available for long. But import.io is a very popular web-based scraping tool that's pretty flexible. I know Aaron Lintz is also a big fan of that one. One that a lot of sourcers like to use that's an installed software product but still very cheap is called Outwit Hub. You can go to outwit.com and download a free trial of that, and if you decide you want the full product, I believe it's still only about $80 permanent. So that's for a very robust tool. The only negative about Outwit is it's got much more of a learning curve to it, so you would have to be somewhat techie inclined, willing to spend a little time to get to learn it, though the built-in tutorials and examples are good. Anyone else? Something I went through a little fast you want to get a little clarification on? That's a fair question too. Dan, I'm not seeing anything. Do you think that we exhausted?
No, guest A4, do you have a question? Oh, I guess not. Well, maybe so.
Go ahead, unmute yourself, please.
Well, it looks like maybe that's it. Glenn, thank you so much. No, oh, guest A4. Do you have a question for Glenn?
Dan, if there's a question, I'm not seeing it or hearing it.
No, a few mics have come on, but I'm not hearing it either. So unless anybody has a question they want to get in, let me extend the Search Wizard's thanks to you, Glenn. It was a fabulous presentation, even for a non-sourcer like me. And yes, to answer Michelle's question, within a few business days, you can look for a follow-up email with links to watching this presentation, I believe on YouTube, if that's correct, Miranda, or however we set it up. But everybody will have a chance to review all of the information.